Hey guys, me again. Okay, sorry it's been a bit of a delay, but as you probably know, I've migrated everybody to Microsoft Teams, so you should have an email alerting you to that. Also, that means that you have access to Microsoft Word. I can do quizzes, I can do graded assignments like they would be in the junior cert, etc., etc. But anyway, let's crack on with a bit of work, and then I'll put an assignment up for you on Microsoft Teams. Okay, so we're going to look at the Civil War today. It was about a year in duration, lasted from 1921 to 1922. Well, 20, yeah, anyway, we'll crack on. So let's see. Okay, so what have we got? How did the Civil War start? The last thing that I said to you was about the treaty and how De Valera and Cathal Brugha and all the anti-treaty people walked out of the Dáil after the vote on the treaty went in favour of the treaty against De Valera and Cathal Brugha. So as that was happening, at the same time, the British withdrew, as you can see here, from barracks around the country. So where they had RIC, where they had DMP, Dublin Metropolitan Police, where they had any kind of like law enforcement, they just exited, a bit like they're doing in Afghanistan at the moment. Okay, then what happened was the pro-treaty and the anti-treaty IRA members scrambled to take over these barracks. So if you remember the what's it called, the IRA had been in the hands of Michael Collins. Now, when the government split, when the Dáil split, likewise the IRA split as well, and there were pro-treaty IRA and anti-treaty IRA. So the pro-treaty ones became known as the regulars or the Free State Army, because you know Ireland was now called the Irish Free State. The anti-treaty soldiers were called the Republicans or the Irregulars. I like the word irregular, I think it's a good one. And then in April 1922, a group of these irregulars took over the four courts in Dublin. So it's kind of the same thing that the that happened during the 1916 Rising. You know, go straight to an important building, take over that building. Now, it worked during the 1916 Rising up to a point because the British were involved in a war elsewhere. It was kind of a surprise. Nobody knew it was happening. And as well as that, the people who were taking over the building were fighting against people who were from another country. This move that the irregulars, the Republicans, did, the anti-treaty people, it worked against a foreign force, but it's not going to work particularly well against a domestic or an Irish force. Okay, so we'll crack on. Right, so there's the forecourt, and you can see that it has been bombed to bits. So the Civil War began properly in terms of combat when the Free State Army under Michael Collins borrowed large guns from the British and bombarded the forecourts. Now, this is where some people begin to have problems with Michael Collins, because not only did he turn guns on his own men, as many saw them, they were people who'd been fighting alongside him a few years previously, but he also turned British guns on Irish men, and some people found that very hard to forgive. You can see there an armoured car. So after days of fierce fighting, the Republicans finally surrendered the four courts, and they were defeated in Dublin. Cathal Brugha and many other Republicans were killed in the fighting, and that, you know, it's a sad fact, you know, that some great people were lost during the Civil War. Then the Republicans retreated to Munster, where they had a lot more support. So they went from, where's the cursor? There it is. From Dublin, they retreated down the country to Munster. And they adopted guerrilla tactics against the Free State Army. But the Free State Army had proper uniform. But it was an Irish army. And here's the problem with guerrilla tactics against people from the country. They all know, they used to fight together against the British, so they all know the same tactics. They know the hiding spots. Also, in the War of Independence, it was very clear the IRA were the friends and the British were the enemy. But now what you have is some Irish people being friends and some Irish people being enemies. So guerrilla tactics are not going to work because, they learned them from Michael Collins. The Republicans, the irregulars, learned these guerrilla tactics from Michael Collins, and he is now leading the Free State Army. So it's not going to work. So the Civil War was very bitter, and both sides carried out brutal killings. Michael Collins himself was ambushed and killed by irregulars in a place called Bailnamlaw, and that's in County Cork. And that's a picture of his coffin with him lying in state. And you can see the army's uniform there, the Free State Army. And he was given a state funeral, and he was walked on a gun carriage to Glasnevin Cemetery. So the Free State government was now led by W.T. Cosgrave, and this is where things got really bitter. Okay, W.T. Cosgrave wanted to bring the Civil War to an end as quickly as possible. So what he did was he executed as many people as possible. And then he imprisoned over 12,000 people without trial. It was far more brutal than the British had done. So this made lots of people really, really angry with him. It seemed like an awful kind of like overreaction to what had gone on. Okay, so where am I now? Okay, so by the spring of 1923, the Free State Army had controlled almost all of the country. So they'd brought everything back under control. They were much more successful than the British Army had been during the War of Independence. Okay, so the Republican leaders, Eamon de Valera and this new guy, Frank Aitken, saw that the situation was hopeless and they decided to bring about a ceasefire. So this was the end of the Civil War. So it lasted the guts of a year from 1922 to 1923. Okay, so what I'm going to do is post some questions on Edmodo in the not Edmodo, the other one, Microsoft Teams, in the form of a quiz. And I would really like it if you higher level students would turn it in. That'd be great. Okay, look forward to seeing you soon. Broaders, out.